Okay, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Catherine Myers and I'll be the host for this session. The title of the session is My Paper Was Good, Why Did I Get a Failing Grade? Presented by Parenteau and Debora Scheffel. We are really excited that you've joined us here today. During the presentation, we will keep the chat window closed so you can pay attention. And then at the end of the session, we will open up the chat window and we would love for your questions and participation at that time. So without further ado, please welcome Carol and Debora.
Thank you, Catherine. We're delighted to be here representing University of the Rockies, and we want to share with you some of the work that we have done so far on this topic.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thanks for joining our session.
So the title of our presentation alludes to the fact that we found that there's a gap between students' perceptions of academic writing expectations and what faculty expect them to have. So Rockies analyzed this problem, and we want to really focus on actually creating signals that assessing students in a way that would signal that they need support, rather than that assessing their work and letting them know that maybe that's a trigger for them to exit the program. Our idea is to be inclusive about academic literacy by, taking into account all the types of learners that we have at University of Rockies. People come from different times in their lives, and there's different challenges. So we want to appeal to everybody there. And overall across the nation, we see that 50% of doctoral students drop out before the proposal stage, and there are many reasons for that. But again, at University of the Rockies, we have investigated the causes in different ways. We've done the root cause analysis. We have asked for feedback from faculty. We've seen learning outcomes. And the first idea was to use the Writing Center as a resource for students to be helped with writing. And that has yielded some really excellent results, and we have a tremendous writing center, but we think that's not enough. In the meantime, the percentage of students enrolling in online programs continues to grow. And also with that, the number of underrepresented students that may bring some special challenges about writing for them. And that could include the fact that they come from, they are returning to school after many years, and many other reasons for that. So at the University of the Rockies, we came up with a vision for literacy that was all encompassing. We drafted a strategic academic literacy plan, which is a roadmap to infuse literacy competencies in the curriculum. And that includes informational literacy, not just writing, but interpersonal and self-directed skills, quantitative reasoning, and higher order thinking. But in order to begin this project, we really wanted to focus on the most important piece, which is academic writing skills. And with that, we partnered with our faculty member, Debora Scheffel, who really is an expert in literacy, and we're really lucky to have her today. And she helped us conceive this model for addressing literacy at a different level than the Writing Center is doing that, with these 4 linguistic categories that are foundational to writing, and that entail syntax, relationships between sentences, vocabulary, and mastery of content. So with that, we created a pilot study. We started a pilot study by putting these categories into a rubric and asking students in the virtual in-residence to submit sample papers that we can access.
And so one of the issues for the students is many of them have high grade point averages and they do well in their classes, and yet when it comes to the seminal experience of writing a doctoral dissertation, they may struggle. And so sometimes for students, they feel that, really I'm doing great in my classes overall, but then when it gets to this large writing project that really is unique to the doctoral experience, they struggle. And so we wanted to show the difference and help students understand the difference between overall their performance in the program, but the skills that they really need to do this unique assignment, which is to do original research and to write a dissertation. As we looked at what students need, we found that a lot of students were getting feedback on APA format and style, which is helpful. They might be getting feedback in terms of critical thinking or how well organized their writing was. But we found that as we looked at several different ratings of our students, that those that were scoring on our rubric basic or below basic writers, that we really need to look at foundational literacy and linguistic skills at the sentence level. And so a lot of feedback for students is at the process level, or at, as you can see in this graphic, in the middle level, like how are they thinking about the ideas that they're trying to convey. But what we found was that we needed to go deeper than that or go more foundational and really look at writing at the sentence level. And that implicated vocabulary, word choice. Do they know the vocabulary well that represents their topic? Syntactic complexity, of course, is also at the sentence level. Do they know how to string ideas together in a sentence to convey clarity in terms of meaning? And then cohesion is tying sentences together, both within and between sentences. And of course, that's in the context of subject matter expertise. So they're not just using any vocabulary or any cohesive devices, but those that are particularly suited to the subject matter that they're trying to convey with clarity. When we think about an adult learning model, of course, Malcolm Knowles' name comes to mind in his andragogy model, really. And we know that for adults trying to be successful in graduate school, that they have a great immediacy, because many of the students in these programs, one might think, well, we need to teach them to write better. And yet, that may be true, but what we really need to do is back map it based on the immediate need that they have, which of course is at the assignment level, and then ultimately at the writing level, but linked to their research and to their dissertation topic and to that experience. So with that in mind, we wanted to not come up with a comprehensive plan for teaching writing, but rather to look at the writing needs of the students and then to back into that with what would really give an immediate impact on the quality of writing. Some of the students would be submitting assignments and professors might really have the experience in reading it. I don't really know what this student is saying after I read several paragraphs. And it's for those students that end up scoring basic or below basic on the rubric that we use, we had to figure out what would be some immediate, just-in-time feedback for them at the sentence level that would really help them move into a place in their writing skills where they could benefit from the kind of feedback that they would typically get from faculty or the Writing Center. So this is the rubric that we developed. You'll see it has 4 basic ratings: advanced writing, proficient writing, basic and below basic writing. And you can see the 4 basic categories on the left. And what we're trying to do is use this rubric again to identify students that would be scoring basic or below basic in their writing skills based on a submitted writing sample for the purpose of helping figure out who needs additional support. University of the Rockies has a great support system. Faculty give excellent feedback. The Writing Center does a great job supporting students. But what we found was that some students needed additional support, and we needed a way to figure out who those students were. And the good news is it doesn't turn out to be a huge number, but it's a substantial number and a significant number, because for those students, they may end up going through their coursework, but then not being able to really be successful in that dissertation process and on lengthy, complex writing tasks. So this rubric was designed to identify who are the students that would be rated in the basic or below basic areas so that we could provide the kind of support that would help them be successful.
Right, and so far we have, since August 2016, we have assessed the papers of 139 students, which is 88% of the students that have come through the in-residence session. So that's a really good number. We had 24 workshops and 5 in-residence sessions, and we have trained faculty to help us assess and score those papers, and we provide rich feedback, not only annotated in the rubric on their paper, but also a summary feedback, as well as a score that is really tied to that rubric. So the students will be aware of what areas of those foundational skills they could beef up their skills. And along with that, in the waypoint rubric, we have links that will help them go to either vocabulary or syntax and get some exercises they can do on their own. This is the way we're tracking right now. It's a very manual process. We get some good results in waypoint, but they're not really as granular as we would like them to be. So we're manually tracking the score the students have and created a heat map, as you see here. The students that have the red areas are scoring below basic. And like you can see in this snapshot, they're not very many, but that signals that really they could use the help. So reach out to them. We communicate with other parts of academics so they receive that kind of support. Dr. Scheffel has met with them one-on-one, and so we continue to try to improve those intervention strategies to help those students.
And this is our attempt for reliability using the rubric. As we know, we wanted to bring in faculty, train them to use the rubric to score papers that students would be submitting as a writing sample. And just a shout out to the faculty for their willingness to go through that training and to stick with us and to look at these papers. It's, you know, detailed work, but they do a wonderful job. And they link their feedback to the language in the rubric so that it's a very clear connection, so that students have clarity around how can they, you know, what would be the targeted approach for them to improve their writing. And as you can see, we get pretty good inter-rater reliability as we use the rubric together, and it's designed to, again, not exhaustively give students all the feedback that could be imagined in writing, but to really choose those areas at the sentence level from a linguistic perspective that would have the highest impact of improving their writing if they're basic or below basic. And, you know, clarity is such a big issue at that point. And so landing on specific vocabulary, clear syntactic constructions to convey meaning, linking ideas together with clarity, and then, of course, doing it in the context of a content area is what we feel really helps our students.
And I wanted to go back to this slide to say that we're tracking students over three, sometimes four in-residence sessions that they come to. So we look at the progress, and that is what is different in terms of assessment versus grading. They don't receive a grade, but they just assess over time. So if in this tracker, if a student is coming for the second time, we're keeping note whether or not that grade has improved and whether or not they have received, on top of that, support from the writing center. So we're trying to look at all those aspects.
So it's really formative feedback for students. They can, you know, the GPA is one thing, grades in classes is one thing, but this is all about really just helping them improve, and is such a central skill. When we think about how writing is typically approached, the process approach is what would be typically the feedback from faculty would often be based on a process approach, a strategy approach to writing, which is helpful for many students. And the Writing Center and tutoring services often focus on writing from that perspective. So the kind of feedback that might issue from that perspective might be, you know, your work is not organized well enough. You need to go back and organize better, or draft, do another draft, or edit your work. Those kinds of words are helpful for students that have basic foundational skills, but for those that don't, the word edit may not help them, may not be specific enough. And so what we did was kind of dove down into the more foundational aspects of writing, looking at structural patterns and linguistic components, and that's where we surfaced the categories that now comprise the rubric. And we essentially try to help students gain expertise in those foundational areas, and then they can, again, begin to profit from the kind of feedback that faculty would typically give more from a process perspective. We came up with, we wrote a playbook to support students and support faculty, and it essentially outlines what a tutoring approach might be to support our students. We base it on evaluating first their writing, and as you can see, students submit their writing into the shell during in-residences so that their writing can be analyzed from the perspective of the rubric, and then we deconstruct with them where are the areas that they need improvement, and then reconstruct writing with examples that they can take the feedback that we've provided, and then finally reevaluate their writing to look for advancement and change. And that's why Carol said we do track it over time to say, you know, in residence 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, as they receive this feedback, is their performance in writing getting better so that they can be successful in the writing projects that subserve success in these programs.
Right, so also wanted to say that these documents are really useful in just putting out there the conceptual framework for where we're coming from and what are the areas that really we want to focus on, and it makes that very clear and distinct from other processes that are being utilized.
This is kind of the gradual release model that many of us have read about. It really has to do with do the work with the student, model for the student, ask the student to join with us in working on their writing in these categories, and then they'll be more successful on an independent level. What's wrong, I think, sometimes in the programs where students are at the basic or below basic level, they're given feedback and then left to implement it alone. And so what we're trying to do is partner with them to model better writing in these areas of vocabulary choice, precision, syntactic development, connections between sentences and ideas in a logical sequence. We want to model that for them, let them join with us in partnership in practicing those skills, and then releasing them to be more independent writers. And so far we do see progress in this arena.
Right, and also we have additional efforts going on, and the first part is the interventions. You know, we get the data, we realize that some percentage of students could use our help. So Dr. Scheffel is here doing in residence to have them one-on-one conversations with the students and help them really go over the feedback and see where they can go next. We're also preparing webinars that would help us, you know, expand this communication with the students and with faculty, and also for purpose of training faculty. So all those documents that you saw serve as a really a support for us to continue to stay focused on what we want to do. We're also developing Canvas modules, and hopefully that will help us with the training, and that is in progress. And ultimately what we want to do is integrate some additional activities in the curriculum that would support these 4 linguistic areas. And one of the things that, for example, vocabulary would be something that we can do quite easily, adding, you know, self-checks for students on that specialized vocabulary and help them build from the beginning on that. The same with maybe sentence cohesion. There's some exercises that we can put in as courses so they can gradually build those skills up. So again, our purpose is to actually create a strong signal of those students that need help, rather than writing being one of those triggers that really makes the students leave our program. And with that, we hope that, you know, we would reach all students that could progress in our programs and help them get through their dissertation.
Right, you know, we know that language is on a continuum. It's listening, speaking, reading, and writing is at the apex of that continuum or hierarchy, and we want an inclusive approach so that students that may come into these programs with great professional experience, excellent passion for their educational advancement, that we can help them gain expertise in writing, because many of them just have so much to offer their professions and they're passionate about learning. So it's exciting work to be a part of. So that concludes our presentation, and we left some time to field some questions. If anybody has any questions about any part of the presentation, you can type in. Are there any questions, Deb, in the chat? Not yet.
Yes, there is one already from Elizabeth Artolino. She sent it to me privately because the chat was shut down, so I'll read it to you. Thank you for your question, Elizabeth. Her question/statement. It's a challenge to get the students to the Writing Center. Is there a mechanism where it becomes a requirement for passing a course, or is it only for doctoral students? And I'm going to copy that and put it in the chat as well.
Okay, we can maybe both say something. I want to say that there's not a requirement for students to go to the writing center, and I know the faculty have expressed that desire that that be the case, but they make strong recommendations and we reach out to students, and that's continual. And we have seen an increase of students that reach out to the writing center after they come to in-residence and receive feedback from the writing center, because they come here and to speak to them and to show them what resources we have and how friendly they are and how, you know, accessible they are to them. So that is fantastic. So we hope that that, along with the assessment and feedback that we give them, that allows them to reach out to the writing center, you know, more easily. And on our end, like I said, we actually are tracking the fact that students are accessing the writing center, and we're beginning to see that at the time of the in-residence, they are actually going to the writing center more often.
Yeah, it seems that students, of course, they're very passionate about being successful, and if they find a resource that's helping them, we find that they do go back repeatedly because they're getting the kind of assistance that they need.
Right, and like the title of our presentation said, you know, one of the things that we're also trying to address is the fact that it's difficult for a faculty member that maybe is not does not teach writing to be very specific about the areas that the student needs to improve on. So I think hopefully we're providing some kind of language that is very, very specific at what is it that is not working. Because oftentimes we hear students saying, "What is wrong with my paper? I know that I did well. I know that I write well, and it's a good paper." So it becomes kind of a sort of a standoff between faculty and the students on what is wrong with the paper. So these categories can help us talk very clearly about what is not working.
Excellent.
I wonder if there's another question.
Shall I read the question, or can everyone see it?
Everyone should be able to see it. It's the question from Philip.
Okay, so the question has to do with adapting or scaling the assessment process for master's students.
You want to address that? But let me say one thing, because this goes to the fact that, you know, at University of Rutgers, we have several efforts ongoing to address writing, and of course, each faculty member is really invested, and we've seen some really dedicated faculty that have come up with additional resources and methods to teach writing. But what we're trying to do now, and this is a pretty new effort, is to address students in the early courses, the first 3 courses of the program, and that could be for master's or doctoral programs. So what we want to do at that level is also do this type of assessment and then be able to check later on with them to see how they're doing, you know, after those first 3 courses. So for that, we need to engage the faculty that are teaching those courses and also modify some of the assignments that are there currently. That could be maybe having more focus on APA or not really on those foundational skills. And we also want to work with the faculty to use some of the vocabulary and other aspects there. Any other questions?
Yes, there's a question from Michelle Hinton. Is there a 100 level class for writing?
No, and that is the problem. So that's the major challenge of doctoral programs, because they really are specialized. When you're even at a master's level, I think there's some general, maybe not master's, but at bachelor's level, there's a general education mandate, really by accreditors. So you have to teach writing, you have to teach history, you know, there's some core requirements. But at master's and doctoral levels, that's not a requirement. And I know that Ashford has some writing courses. And I don't know what level they are, maybe they're bachelor's, but definitely not in our master's programs or doctoral programs. We don't have a dedicated writing course, so that is problematic. And that's what our idea is, to actually make it almost invisible and infuse it into the curriculum as just part of what students do. So embed that pedagogy in there without, you know, requirement the students that they get this specific courses.
Kind of has to do with the adult learning model.
Right.
That a lot of adults wouldn't maybe be open to taking a writing course per se, but if it's woven into the courses seamlessly and if they're learning it as they go, in a sense, it's a great efficiency for the students.
Right. Anything else? Any other questions?
We have about 5 minutes left in the session, so plenty of time if any quick ones come up. And maybe while people are thinking of questions, I really like, Deb, what you just said too about maybe sometimes adults are reluctant to take an official writing class, but if it's kind of embedded into the course, it makes it a little easier to do and kind of on demand or live with them.
And it's so relevant to them, right? It's not as though they're learning a skill in a vacuum, but it's directly related to a paper that they're writing anyway. And that's the efficiency for students. You know, we know that they're professionals, they're working, they're using this genre because of the convenience and the ability to do it while they work. And so, of course, learning this skill while they're taking classes, that's the efficiency that they look for.
Right, and Ross spoke about, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's not that they're getting lessons on, you know, the proper like there, and there, you know, and grammar. It's relatable, as you just said.
Right. And I think what is interesting is that the adult learning model calls for, you know, self-directed learners, and they're ready to learn and all that. But in reality, we realize that adults really need a lot of support, and they're not willing to necessarily ask for it. But for example, they don't have a lot of time. And that's something that we don't consider a lot because we think, okay, they'll figure out their schedule. You know, they sign up for this, they're adults, they'll figure it out. But really, we need to help them. And I think we can do some things within the courses to structure them in a way that sets them up for managing those challenges that they have. You know, think about people that have been out of school for many, many years and are returning and they kind of have lost some of those skills or are reluctant or afraid and they don't want to ask for help. And so there are challenges with really assuming that the adult learning model is really, you know, helping us.
Very good. Any last minute questions from the group? Maybe, Carol, you can share your contact information in the chat box. So if people do have questions, they can reach out to you, Carol or Debora. Oops, one quick one. Oh, one quick one just popped and we have 2 minutes from Jen. If you build it into a course, would it be required for students, even those who don't need it?
I think the goal is again for efficiency, not to require anything pell-mell for everybody, but to have more of a differentiated approach to this, which is why the rubric is helpful. Because again, students are really wanting to be very efficient with their time and resources, and so I don't think we'd want to require something for everyone across the board, because only, as we look at that heat map, really only a small percent of students need this level of support and the kind of support that the rubric would suggest to help them move from being a basic or below basic writer into a proficient writer for graduate work.
Right, so definitely part of it, the plan of using this in the curriculum, some will be completely invisible to anybody and beneficial to all. But I think definitely introducing that differentiation into the course has to be a consideration to not overwhelm or for those that really are ready to move on.